Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band podcast. I am your host, Benedikt Hein. We are streaming live from Studio Szene 2024 in Hamburg. We are on the studio sofa. The guys of Sound and Recording let us use the sofa for these 3 days, and it's been a lot of fun so far. I'm here with my friend and co-host, Malcolm Owen Flood, and we are joined by Julia Borelli today. So, hello, Julia. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Thank you for having me.
That's an absolute pleasure. We're going to talk about Julia's career, about music production, obviously. Maybe we're going to sprinkle in some social media marketing questions because Julia's pretty good at that. We'll see where this conversation goes. But first of all, I hope you're feeling better. I know that you had, the start was not ideal, I'd say, here for you, health-wise, but I'm glad you made it. And you got a masterclass today, right? This is happening? Awesome.
Yeah,
so if you're here at the event, go to the masterclass. It is happening. We're looking forward to that. What are you going to be showing at this masterclass?
So I chose a song from Leaning that I mixed a few months ago to show. I'll talk a bit about my philosophy and how I see mixing, and also show how I mix a song. So.
Okay, awesome. Would you say you are primarily a mix engineer, or is it more producing, or both, or how would you say? What would you call yourself?
So I would call myself a mixing and mastering engineer, and I actually started my career as working in mastering, and then I started mixing. So and then now I'm also producing, not as much as mixing and mastering, but also producing.
All
Very
right.
cool. You also have a group with your sister, I believe, I've read as well, right?
I have it started as during Corona. I went back home, and then for fun, she was just asking me how to make music, and then we started having fun, and then we got signed with a label.
That's amazing. Just a couple years later. That's great. That's great.
But now I do it as a side thing for fun. But I actually, since last December, I'm working on the project again, and
awesome.
It's exciting.
And are you producing and mixing and engineering and all that?
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So this is a little off topic, but I was very interested in it. While doing some research on you, I saw that you were involved with a product campaign. So were you producing music for the runway show?
I did the masters there.
The
it was actually a very funny. I was actually doing a master class in a school in the evening, and then as I was giving the class, I had my phone next to me, and then I just got a bunch of messages saying Richie Houghton, Prada, master tonight, and I was like, I think we need a break.
Need it now. I just got to go master a song. I'll be right back.
And then I called them. They're like, Richie Houghton is producing the tracks for Prada, and he needs a master, and they need it by 10 a.m. tomorrow. He said it's only going to take a couple of hours. That was 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, sure. Till midnight, I can do it.
Yeah.
I was there till 9 a.m. the next day.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
It was, and I missed, it was a live stream during Corona, and I missed the live stream because I was sleeping.
Oh,
because it was live at 1 p.m. So.
Oh, God.
That's still a fun project to get.
But it worked.
Yeah.
They were happy, I think, right?
Yeah, and then I started doing all his masters. So.
Oh, no way.
It worked pretty well.
Well, yeah, that's amazing how that happens sometimes. These little things that come out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden it's this whole part of your life now.
Yeah. With everything in my career so far, it's been like that. I was available when someone else wasn't, and then they liked the work, and they kept working with me. So.
All right. I hope you get a very cool text message during this interview.
That would be nice. Well, it goes back to what we were talking about yesterday with Dom, for example, and other people. Every single time, some people are just unwilling to do that, to put in the effort. They will be like, no, I'm busy, I can't do it, period. And then they miss out on all the opportunities, right?
It's I have to be home by 7 because it's dinner time.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't mean that every day must be like that, but you have phases where there's rest, but sometimes it's stressful, you got to do it, and then that leads to other stuff. So that's really interesting to hear.
Yeah, there are a lot of sleepless nights involved in this work, for sure.
Yeah, totally, I believe it. What made you start, or what made you want to start with mastering? What fascinated you about this? Because many people do it the opposite sort of direction, where they end up being a mastering engineer at some point. But what made you want to be a mastering engineer?
It was actually, so I got into engineering because I was in a band and we had to record our first EP, classic. And on one of the recording sessions that we had, I became friends with the engineer in that studio, and he had a friend that is a top mastering engineer in Brazil, and he needed an assistant. So he connected us, and then I started assisting him, and he's like, I'm very grateful for him, and I learned so much from him. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then you said like, I want to be involved in the process more, or did someone just call you and ask that you also mix or produce, or how did that sort of development backwards, and it's not really backwards, but like from mastering down to like production happen?
I think then I moved to Germany then. It was like 8 years ago, and I guess it just happened. Like a lot of the artists that I work with are in the electronic scene, so and most of them mix themselves, and then I would master for them, and then at some point they were like, oh, can you also mix? And then I started also mixing for them.
This is a great point that I actually wanted to talk about, because of you being in the electronic music world. I feel like in that world the lines between production, mixing, and mastering are kind of a little blurred sometimes compared to like the rock world often. I mean, we also have self-mixing bands and all that, but like a lot of the people who primarily make music on the computer, they start writing, and before they know it, they're already mixing, and then at some point it's done. But it's this one process oftentimes. Like sometimes they leave out the mastering, yeah. But like, do you agree? Like, I feel that's different compared to like the rock world a little bit. And where, like, is there a clear line where you say like, no, that's typically where I start mixing? I feel like a lot of people mix this up.
I think with electronic, most people are also mixing. It's always a problem when they're not. You know, like I strongly believe in the production process. You should also be slightly like working on the mix. Otherwise, you'll never get to the sound. Like the better productions that I get, they're already sounding good, and my job is just to you know, give the goosebumps to the track. It's often a problem, and usually a production problem, when people are expecting that the mix will save it, and then the master will save it. Yeah. And we all know it's not. It's never going to be the case.
Yeah. It's like in our world, or because we primarily work in rock, but some in our coaching community, for example, there are some people who do mostly electronic music as well. And the difference is really, or like it's not that different actually. That what we do in our world, where we get it right at the source, like we did on our talk yesterday, microphone positions and all that. It's the same thing in the computer. You get good tones, you shape them, you do whatever you need to do to produce a great song, and then whatever you can't do, someone else comes in and takes it to the next level. But it's not that you. It would be the equivalent of just plugging in your guitar without doing anything and then recording everything very raw and careful and then sending it to a mix engineer. Then we need to make it happen. It would be the same thing in the electronic world, where you just pick boring stuff and then say like, we'll give you the MIDI and then be like, do something with that.
If the sound design is not right, it's not the mixing that's going to save it. I mean, sometimes I try. But
you can obviously do some magic, but like,
but they shouldn't expect that I do the magic.
Does that happen? Like our nightmare scenario is they send us MIDI drums that are literally just the MIDI, there's no drum sounds, and then DI guitars, DI bass, and then just a vocal track, right? And they're like, mix it, and we're like, we don't even know if you want distorted guitars or not. Like, what is this meant to be? That's our nightmare. Does that happen with you, whether they're like, there's like a placeholder kick, there's a placeholder snare sound. The synth I really don't like. Can you swap that out for something good? Like, do they?
Usually I have a very OCD like requirement PDF that my team sends to the artists and producers, explaining how I want the files that I want to receive are sounding like you want it to sound. You know, because. So much of that is production, and
100%. That's I think Warren coined that. The scenario we just described, he's encountered as well, and he's like, at that point, you're producing the song, you're not mixing it. And that's it's not okay.
And it's like, especially, I mean, 99% of the tracks that I work in, like I'm alone in the studio, you know, because they're touring or they're everywhere in the world, so. I can't guess what they want with that, you know. You're not. It's not like they're in the room with you giving feedback. It doesn't work. So.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Where is your studio?
I'm based in Berlin.
In Berlin, cool, awesome. I got to get to Berlin. Everybody's been from Berlin lately.
Berlin has a great electronic music scene. Definitely.
Also, I feel like it's growing in all genres. There's I love how creative it is, and in the winter it's pretty bad, but in the summer is great. In the winter I'm just in the studio. Yeah, please.
A good friend of mine that I told you about, Philip, who just his YouTube channel exploded over the last year. He went from Bavaria. He moved to Berlin because of the electronic music scene. He's doing pretty well he now moves to Spain, actually, Manel. But he's been in Berlin for that reason for a while and started his career there, and it worked out well for him. He wouldn't have done that in Bavaria.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Spain and I think Portugal is also getting big for mostly because of tax reasons. But
that's also a thing. Yeah, that's
kind of fascinating.
Yeah. Do you ever do band or like pop music or anything that's maybe not purely? I mean, pop is kind of electronic, but like other genres in general?
Yeah, I do. So before I was doing like a lot of different genres. Actually, back in Brazil, I was doing mostly like jazz and MPB, which is the
fun. Cool.
Brazilian pop music that is actually very jazzy. Well, and I started doing a lot of electronic because I did one record that did pretty well, and then everyone from that genre started coming for that. So. But I still do a lot of pop. Like the track that I'm going to show later on the masterclass is a pop artist.
And you make your own music too, right? It's like you're an artist as well and a writer.
Yeah.
So is that which like percentage of your career is that like? Is it more like a thing you just love and it's fulfilling, or would you love that to be your main career? Like.
I love being in the studio, and it's a problem that I have right now because...
that's why I'm asking. It's hard to balance. Probably,
I always struggle. Basically, I stopped the project with my sister before because I'd never had time to actually work on that. And... but yeah, now I'm trying to save some time for that, and it's mostly just for fun, like just to, not have a little bit of a different... have one day of the week that I work from... on something for myself. But at the same time, there's a lot of people excited about it, and I don't want to have to go touring. I want to stay in the studio.
Yeah. I think, and that is part of the reason why I ask this. I think sometimes, especially for the people starting out, if they want to build a portfolio as an engineer, producer, mixer, whatever, I think it's a very good idea if you are an artist to also have your own project and work your own, produce your own stuff, because then you can build a portfolio that is unique, and then it's also, you're not limited by the input that you get from other artists. You can do no compromise, all that you can, if you're good, of course. But I think it's a very good way of building a portfolio.
Yeah, and you also learn a lot about like mixing when you are, like a lot of also the other way around. I learn a lot about production when I'm mixing, and then I see the mistakes of the people and see ways to improve it, and then I apply that to my production as well. Yeah,
because I see a lot of people when I go to their websites and then I listen to their portfolio and I'm like, none of that really sounds really good, but then I talk to them because the tracks were bad and that's all I could do, and I was like, but you're a musician yourself, just record a song and make it sound good and put that on your player instead of like being limited by the artists you work with. If you really if you are good, then make your own stuff. And also for networking, like I've always been in bands. It was never my career, it was always a hobby thing, but the amount of people I met on tour and with the labels and like the connections we have, like I don't think I would have a career if I wouldn't have been in bands like for 15 years, honestly.
Finding the bands you would work with.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so networking is like 50% of the work, because I do see also like the higher I go in my career, the easier it is to mix, because the productions are better and the quality of the work is better. If the band is not good, your mix is never going to sound impressive.
Yeah.
Because in the end, a lot of it is also subjective.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're working with a management now, right?
Mm-hmm.
How and when did that step happen, or what made you want to do this? Because there's both ends of this. There's some people who relatively early in their career get help running the business and getting clients and all that, and then there's people who are already really successful and still want to do it themselves. Some of them struggle because of that, others not so much. Like, I'm just interested in hearing your thoughts on this, because I also hear both opinions. I don't have personal experience with managements. I've had a studio assistant, still working with Thomas at the studio. He's really, really great. I have an admin assistant for the back office stuff, but I don't have a management, and so I don't have an opinion. But I hear some people say really good things about it, and people are like, no, I should have done it myself all the time.
I also hear that opinion, but I would not be able to do it by myself. Like, I do see, like, for a long time I was doing it by myself, and what would happen is I would have a full day in the studio, and then in the evening I would answer emails and like have to stay up till 1 a.m. answering everything, and then the next morning have to be in the studio. And there was it's just not sustainable. So getting a team was definitely a good step for me, and like I had many burnouts before trying to make it work.
Right. So it just keeps you doing the studio stuff rather than the typing emails kind of stuff.
Much more fun.
Awesome.
And was the value of I've had a manager in my musical career with my band, and I loved it. I think it was a game changer. Same thing, just I couldn't handle having to do the post, having to book all that and negotiate, and it just like kept us writing and doing the good stuff, playing shows.
I think especially the negotiation is like it's so much harder to negotiate for yourself.
Absolutely, yes. So I was
100%.
wondering if that was the value you got as well.
Like I want to do everything. I love my job. If I could, I would work every day of my life, but it's also not healthy. So, so having someone that negotiates and filters for you is really a game changer.
Also, I think it's an advantage if you get to be the good guy, good girl in the conversations with people, and then there's never a negative thing. All you talk about to the artist is the art itself. It's like all about that, and all the like potentially negative stuff, or whether it has to be negotiation, that does someone else. I think that's good for the relationship with the artist.
My manager is the bad cop. I'm the good.
Yeah. And I think that can be really good. Like because I'm also like you never. Yeah, I feel like you just have a better relationship with the artists if you don't have to argue with them personally.
But on the other hand, now I think everybody listening to this is going to be like, I like mixing more than I like emailing too. I like recording more than I like emailing or negotiating as well. So I want a manager. But you can't just get a manager. No. It's not like you can't just flick that switch. And in my experience, you can't get a manager until you've already got into that point where you are managing yourself. You essentially have to already be running a successful business, and then because they need something out of it too, right? If you haven't built it up to that level, then they're just creating work for themselves without any return. They have to make a living. Did that ring true for you?
Yeah, for sure. My manager now. He was the A&R on the label that I got signed to, and then he left the label and opened his management, and he reached out to me and he was like, "Well."
So it was a connection you had made through working with their bands, that label's bands.
With my project, the project with my duo.
It all ties in together, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's pivot a little bit and talk about some music production actionable technique stuff, maybe. What are can you tell us a little bit about your setup? Like maybe some not, I don't know how big it is or how maybe the most important things that you couldn't live without in your setup, and how your workflow is set up and all that.
My laptop. And a good monitoring system. Right. Yeah. Well, right now I'm using the Atom S3V, and I've been trying many different ones to try to upgrade, but I'm just so used to them, and I've been working with them for so long. I can't.
Sounds familiar.
They got a booth right behind us here.
I've got the Atom smaller ones, but like A77X, it's the midfield with the two 7-inch drivers. I've been wanting them to upgrade them for 13 years now, but I just can't make myself do it because I know them so well, and I'm afraid what's going to happen.
Exactly. I tried for a few weeks different ones. I'm not going to say which one. And I swear it affected my mental health. I was I can't mix anymore. Nothing sounds right.
Thomas, we're never going to upgrade. We're never going to do it. Yeah. So those, and then in terms of it's all in the box. Do you? Do
I have a lot of outboard gear, and I'm not using
much of it.
But it looks nice.
Because it's just I mean, I was using them a lot, but then. It's just with the pace of the industry right now, it's just impossible. Very often I'm at home and they need maybe in LA, which then the times, for them is working hours. For me, it's already time to go to bed and they need a bounce. And I wouldn't go to the studio to do it, so.
So your studio is not at your home? You have a commercial place somewhere?
Yeah, I'm in Riverside Studios.
Yeah. Awesome. So you rent out a spot in there?
Yeah, I have a room there with a little window.
Nice.
Which is rare over there. So I have a session desk with a lot of outboard gear that looks great, and Actually, one of a big space of the record now I put a screen, so I have a big screen with more screen and some upward.
Awesome.
All for the laptop.
And what DAW are you in?
I'm actually using Logic.
Logic, cool. All right, awesome.
Yeah, I used Pro Tools before, but when I switched to M1, I had a lot of bugs.
Oh, really?
So
Yeah.
I switched to Logic. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you work with, I'm just assuming, but probably with Ableton too, but to program things, not so much.
So
like every electronic artist, almost everyone I ever talk to, they use Ableton. So.
Yeah, I know how to use Ableton because I get a lot of sessions from the artists and stuff.
That's what I've expected.
And I sometimes still I've been producing a little bit now, also in Ableton, just when I'm collaborating with other artists and yeah.
But
Logic has the mixer.
It's the best of both worlds, kind of, right?
Yeah, exactly. I cannot work with the idea of not having a mixer, like in Ableton that you have to click on each.
Yes. It's not set up like a normal signal flow workflow. Like everything's different. Yeah. The same.
Which is, I think it's good for being creative, like with the loops and everything. But
and the MIDI workflow is kind of powerful. But I hear you. It's not a mixing console.
Yeah. What DAW are you guys using?
Well, Benny's a Cubase user and I'm a Pro Tools user. I struggled through the M1 changes. I've got a pretty stable rig right now, though. So.
Yeah. Now I heard it's a lot better, but I'm already past it.
Yeah. Well, I was curious because you made the change after a long time with Pro Tools, I'm sure, because the M1 chip's pretty recent, relatively. So how did that change go?
I had already used Logic years before because I did a course at Point Blank when I finished school, and I learned how to use it. So switching wasn't so hard, and I feel like they're pretty similar in a lot of ways.
Anything you miss?
Tab to transient.
Yeah.
A lot.
I don't think I could live without that.
Yeah.
I mean, I told you that I went through the madness last year in trying to learn all the DAWs because of the coaching program we have. So I have a coaching program where I guide people, and they have all kinds of DAWs. And so I said, okay, I guess I just want to learn all the DAWs so I can help them better. And then that was pretty crazy.
Also, with the shortcuts, also switching the brain.
Yeah,
I struggle a bit with Cubase. I tried, but it's.
Yeah, I love Logic. Like Logic makes sense to me. Cubase makes sense to me. Pro Tools also makes sense, but doesn't feel as smooth to me and misses some features. Reaper is like I'm looking at a Windows 95 machine or something like that. I can't handle that user interface. Studio One is similar to Cubase. Ableton is like a different thing, but I just have to have the thing I'm used to. I think everyone's like that a little bit.
Yeah, I think so too.
So, and then in terms of favorite sound tools, whatever that might be, could be plugins, could be hardware. Is there certain go-tos you just cannot live without, or maybe things you just do almost every time because it just works regardless of the song?
Yeah, I always mix coming from a template that I have that has a lot of different selection of things, right? Just so I can be quick and always working with fresh ears. And having to choose, I do really love split EQ. I've been using a lot Space Control now from Acoustica Audio. What else? Sugar.
Oh yeah, it's from the Pure Mix guys, right?
Yeah, the multi-band enhancer. I use that a lot.
Oh, that's good. That's a good one.
I'm curious about loudness in your genre because there's a lot of low end typically, right? So getting that crazy loud, which often it seems to be pretty loud, right?
Yeah.
Is there any tips to pulling that off?
I think getting the low end right on the mix process is very important. I was just doing a master last week actually that had a tricky low end, not very clean, and the phase of the kick was wrong with the bass and stuff, and I had to actually ask them to fix the pre-master, and then it's impossible to get it loud, right? Because so getting the mix right is a great step to, and gain staging right also throughout the process is very, very important to reach, because very loud masters, because in the electronic scene, of course they're actually playing, they're DJing the tracks that they're mastering, so they want very loud, -7 loops.
For sure. Yeah, so and I think that's interesting that you're the second mastering engineer we've talked to in 2 days that has talked about making requests to have the mix sent back to them corrected.
Yeah.
Very necessary.
Yeah, like for a long time in my career, I was just trying to make it work and suffering to, like, and it doesn't make sense. Like, that's a problem in the mix. It should be fixed in the mix.
Yeah. And it's going to benefit them as well, right? It'll benefit the mix engineer as well if you're mastering it, and it'll benefit the recording engineer, the artist, everybody wins.
Yeah, what we want is a great sounding record, so like why not collaborate on reaching that?
Yeah, I guess the fear is like offending somebody, right? Like that's
yeah, there's always the way. I feel like a lot of my work is also the psychology of how to communicate things.
Yes, yeah. So in that situation, curious because you have a manager, do you get the manager to do it, or do
I
you
feel like
handle that one?
I think, from my experience, I think going the personal way of like me reaching out to them, especially, I mean, sometimes a lot of them like talking on WhatsApp, which I try to avoid, but it's impossible.
Yeah.
I even maybe WhatsApp them, and because then they feel the connection. And,
yeah. Hey, just working on it. I just need this little tweak. Do you mind correcting the phase of your mix?
Yeah. Yeah. Or like I'm happy to give feedback on how you can improve this, and very often they're happy with like the phase thing with the kick is so like common to be an issue.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
And it usually helps a lot. So that's a common mistake that I hear on the pre-masters.
Can you explain that to our audience, please? Because just in case someone is not aware of what we're talking about with like phase relationship between kick and bass, because you might be familiar with like a snare top and bottom mic or multiple kick mics and how they are in phase, but maybe not so much with like the relationship between kick and bass, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's from physics class. If you have a wave going up and down, and then you have another wave that it's going down and up. They cancel each other, and if you have two waves going up, like positive, then they add to each other. So that of course also affects, especially in the low end. So a lot of my mixing process is actually fixing the phase of everything, and you see that of everything, even hi-hats,
Interesting.
It takes a long time, but it really, like, if you get this done in the beginning, the mixing process gets a lot easier.
Yeah, totally. It is a thing. I mean, it's a kind of. I feel like that's why I'm asking. I feel like in the electronic world, it's in some cases a little more important, maybe because like if we're dealing with like more raw, dirty or mid-rangey bass guitars, they maybe don't share as much of the same kind of low end with the kick drum as it might be in the electronic world, where you have a very subby bass or 808s or stuff like that, where it's even more important.
Yeah, they sustain over each other in very short amounts of time.
Yeah,
generally.
I get this kind of problem often with bands when they add electronic elements to their songs and they have like 808s or sub bass synths and stuff like that. Then I get these problems. When it's a typical bass guitar, oftentimes there's enough like separation between where the kick is and the bass is anyways, because there's almost no low end except the kick drum in many of these rock mixes. But with the more electronic elements and sub elements come into play, the more important it gets for me.
Yeah, I often actually, like when the basses are not covering the low end, I like pushing it to, I love a nice sub, so I try to push the bass to reach lower frequencies as well. And then if you fix the phase, it gets a lot better. And I feel like also with the low mids, you get a lot more space. And,
Are you generally just zooming in on a couple transients and taking a peek, or are you you don't have to have transients, so maybe it's just quicker to use your ears?
I used to do it that way, but the problem is sometimes they want to replace files, and then you have to do it all again, and it's all different. So and then I started doing just with the like gain plugin, just swapping the phase and going one by one swap. Like that's one thing that it's on every track on my template is the gain plugin with the phase swapped, and then I just go one by one switching and seeing what sounds better. But now I've been using Fuser also to...
Fuser, I don't think I know that.
It has you can like resolve conflicts, which is basically sidechaining, and you can automatically fix the phase. So you just sidechain to your kick.
It's kind of like an auto. Does it align, like sample delay things to align? Oh, cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Like I try to do it on the groups, and then like I'm very OCD about my session, and I organize that like all the drums or kick, all the other drums, bass, and in every group of these I have Fuser swapping the phase, and whenever there's one element that I need to invert the phase of just that specific one, then I use the gain. Yeah.
Interesting. Very cool.
Yeah.
Do you ever get pushback from artists or producers when you request a new version of a mix because of a problem like that? Did you ever get like, no, I don't do this, it's exactly right? Do they trust you? They probably trust you in general, but I don't know.
It's very rare, but sometimes it does happen. And I have to be like, okay, I'll try my best.
Work around their ego.
Yeah, that's the thing, because what are you going to do? Are you trying to win the argument or make the client happy? Or like,
in the end, it's their track, so
you can only try.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Totally. So any, like, from the top of your head, is there like one, the phase one was a big one, by the way, that's cool, but like, is there any like little trick or thing that comes to mind, that some little thing that you can share that was a game changer that you discovered recently or have been using for a while?
I mean, the phase is a big thing. I don't know, maybe like I see a lot of people having difficulties with compression, and maybe one thing that I do uncommon is I rarely actually use compression. I use mostly saturation to compress. Maybe that's
a good point.
Yeah, because you can add color, and in the end, like a lot of these the compressors that we love are also just coloring. And I use a lot of saturation instead of compression.
Oh, that's interesting. What saturation tools are you gravitating towards?
I'm using a lot like sugar.
Yep. Okay.
When it's a bit more of an aggressive saturation, or Exciter from Isotope as well.
Yep.
I use it a lot.
I use that too.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay.
Awesome.
It's great.
So I'm afraid we're getting to the end of this. We're going to wrap this up very soon. Thank you so much for joining us at the sofa here, Julia. This was awesome, amazing answers to these questions. For those of you who joined us late, this is going to be, this is recorded, so you can rewatch and re-listen to this on the Self-Recording Band podcast. If you go to theselfrecordingband.com, you'll find the podcast link and also the YouTube link and all of that. We'll put links in the description to Julia's websites and how to contact her if you want to hire her to mix your music. Julia's going to do a masterclass today that I highly encourage you to watch. And also, if you want to win a pair of studio monitors, Studio Scene is giving away a pair of monitors. If you take a picture of this here and you post and you use the hashtag Studio Scene and tag sound and recording, and while you're at it, tag the Self-Recording Band as well. Just tag us all, post the picture, then you can win a pair of studio monitors. So thank you so much for coming and listening to this. Thank you for watching the live stream. And thank you, Julia, again, for joining us here.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Our pleasure. Thanks.